Hello and welcome to School Day Connections Beyond the Bell, part of the North Carolina Virtual Synergy Conference. My name is Fausto Lopez and I am with Beyond the Bell at the American Institutes for Research. American Institutes for Research, we push to really generate and use and apply the most rigorous evidence in the field across education, across workforce development, across the spectrum of what we know is our contribution to a more and equitable world. In our team, we focus specifically on youth development and supportive learning environments, and really pushing and always thinking through the work that underpins how we provide the most quality learning environments for our young people and push out the way that we incorporate all of the various ecosystems that support their positive development. And we know specifically in this instance that because our young people spend a lot of time in school, will spend a lot of time again in virtual aspects of schooling, that we really need to apply how we think about our approach to supporting the work of the academic or the formal learning space. This session specifically today is part of our work with the After School and Technical Assistance Collaborative that's funded by the C.S. Mott Foundation. Through this work, we really push ourselves to think through resource development, apply our content expertise, provide training and speaking engagements similar to this one, and when necessary, provide technical support. In our time together, we are going to quickly go over Beyond the Bell as the toolkit, and really framing the tools that you will be referencing and that you have with you as resources that can help you in your planning. We'll talk about that. We're going to really go granular here and think through, again, your school day connections, what that looks like as we push for alignment with our partners, again, depending on where you are in your partnerships with your schools. Some of this might be thinking about getting into a partnership. Some of this might be always about keep sustaining our partnership. Obviously, in this kind of digital shift, we are always in a place of thinking now also what overall alignment is going to keep looking like as things might be moving. But again, we're after school providers, so we're always used to kind of, pivoting, and we're going to think through again how the tools help us just kind of create plans that can also be amended. We're going to start thinking then again, go deeper into, okay, we'll think about alignment in some broader ways that help us with planning. Then we're going to think about how the activities can underpin and support learning. And then really crystallize it with maybe like a really sound academic enrichment plan for an activity that really then across offerings can hopefully support you and your team to really crystallize those really great offerings, robust quality offerings that support the outcomes that you desire and the goals of your program and the needs of your young people. So real quickly, Beyond the Bell is a toolkit. It was designed as a toolkit. It is digital. I'm sure some of you may have had some experience with it, which we will really just for this purposes be living in the fact that they were designed for out of school time or after school programs. There are 96 tools. We will be going through just a few of them and showing you how those tools specifically can kind of help you and your team make these explicit connections to your school day partners. We frame the toolkit under continuous improvement. We know that this work is complicated, a lot of moving pieces, lots of different partners, lots of different needs from our young people, especially as we look to be responsive to them, be responsive to the school community, the staff, the principals, and all those different stakeholders. So we know there's a lot going on. Here specifically, we want to push ourselves to think about, again, we need to be nimble here and look about, we have to develop the programming, we're implementing the programming, we're reflecting and thinking how the program is going, pushing ourselves to improve, and really pushing ourselves through this cycle so that, again, us as a collective, collaboratively, hopefully with other partners, but at least internally, pushing ourselves to work on these things, think through all the context think through the differences across those contexts from school to school, site to site, that really make us have to have differentiated plans. So we're going to hopefully give you some of those tools that can work you through that today. The toolkit is also framed under a youth development approach to working with young people and preparing staff to work in this asset-based approach to working with young people. This pyramid that you see in front of you comes from our friends at the Youth Program Quality, at the Weikart Center for Youth Program Quality. They have a really great process and tool that has always shaped our idea of how we structure our settings to offer the best quality experience for our young people, and that is called the Youth Program Quality Assessment. It is aligned to this framework here that really pushes us to look at our learning, any learning setting. That could be, again, the out-of-school time setting, the in-school setting. This is about climate and culture and creating the conditions for learning, and that's any learning or transfer of knowledge that you are engaging in. So you need to create a safe environment or pay attention to the environment to make sure that it is the most safe that it can be, that you are creating supports there in that environment for the young people, providing, again, engaging activities and different opportunities for skill building that puts us in a position of making sure that we have a good sequence or a good session flow, that we're providing a warm and welcoming environment. What's that look like? We're going to talk about that soon. But the idea is that we have to make sure that you know that the toolkit and everything that you're going to work through is already framed in this. We're trying to push for these peer interactions because we know that that's how learning is crystallized and working, and giving opportunities to lead, to mentor, to work in different size groups. Thinking through this in a virtual concept is also even more critical now, to think how we take ourselves out of the screen time and maybe create opportunities for subgroups and different grouping strategies that just have to work so that young people can learn how to relate to each other. And then really pushing engagement and making sure that our young people, when they get there, are fully engaged, have authentic experiences there and authentic choices, opportunities to reflect and process what they're learning and apply it. And again, we're going to work into how this applies into program in a second. So again, this is how the toolkit specifically is developed and framed. Again, continuous improvement, embedding, and promoting a youth development approach. What does that mean? Okay, well, we want to foster the positive growth of our young people. We want to build on their strengths, which already puts us to commit that they are coming with strengths and we are leveraging them as assets and looking at them and gauging their interests, leveraging their interests to help us design these quality experiences for them. Again, we're addressing their developmental needs, which means that we need to know what those needs are, which pushes us into a place of data and a place of really connecting also with our young people, connecting with the family members, pushing and leveraging as much as what we know about them, specifically when we talk about school day connections, because there's a lot of resources in the school that can provide us these type of insights. But again, quickly, we want to make sure that you push yourself to think how this is all going. Again, that evaluate arm or arrow in our continuous improvement cycle. So this is your first opportunity to work with a tool here. So we're going to have you just think about your program, think about your offerings, think about what you do, think about what you were doing prior to maybe a shift here, and what you're planning to do. But the idea here is you're going to see that this checklist works you through the domains of youth development, similar to the different aspects in that triangle you saw. And it's just kind of a quick diagnostic for you and your team. You can use it in different ways, but actually I'm going to go ahead and let you hit pause, pull out tool 63, and go ahead and just think through those. Take your time. You're going to hit pause here. And when you're done thinking through them and maybe making some notes to yourself, maybe how you can share that with your teammates or your learning here, you can just go ahead and hit, you can then hit play when you're done. So I'm going to go ahead and pause for a second, pull out tool 63, and go ahead and hit play when you're ready to come back. Okay, welcome back. So now here we're really in a place of looking again, why do we assess, right? We want to just see there's a lot going on there. Do I have all yeses? Do I have all nos? If I have all no's, do I close up shop? No, the idea here is to keep pushing. So this is meant to say you can implement this tool in various different ways. You can get different staff members' eyes on this to reflect on that, bring people back together. How many of us are in agreement? We really just want to push the conversation here about in a way that no one is going to have the same answer here. A lot of us are going to feel and experience program and the activities and the way we're designing them in different ways. And that's what we want to fuel the conversation to say, how do we push alignment? So again, this is just some quick data to get us into a place of conversation so that we can then use that to push ourselves into the next pieces. This is also really great for those who don't already align themselves to a youth development approach. We see this helping a lot with, again, onboarding, sharing it with a teacher to, again, solidify that this is how us in our program approach to working with the young people, thinking through these and seeing if there's alignment there. Again, we really just want to push in a safe way the fact that, again, there's a lot on those in the self-assessment, and there's a lot of times going to be a lot of no's or in processes. And if we have yeses, that's great. We want to celebrate those. We want to sustain those. But at the end of the day, we know these are moving targets, and sometimes it's going to be at different times, different answers. And that's okay. We want to push that type of, in a way, disagreement to help push ourselves across improvement. Now, we know that our partners in the school day just have a lot going on. Lots of shifts, lots of changes in personnel. Again, very similar to our programs. Again, lots of revolving doors, and at times you start building relationships with somebody and they're gone the next year. So in the way of trying to sustain our connections, we're really pushing towards alignment and kind of, again, pushing ourselves across the cycle to say that we really just need to pull ourselves into these partnerships. We know that they're critical. We know that they're important, but how do we sustain them? How do we get into purposeful partnerships too? And we know that schools are our most important one. We know that that's where our young people are spending most of their time. That's where their friends are. That's where different challenges exist. That's where different triumphs kind of happen. So we need to make sure. And again, our field of after school, out of school time, has always pushed this. But again, it doesn't always just happen. So we have a great tool here that really just helps us think about this alignment. What does it look like? What does it look like across all of the different characteristics of our program, and how that then maybe is superimposed into the formal learning setting or the school setting? And then thus starting to think where there is alignment, where there's disalignment, and then how we start calibrating ourselves better through our planning, and hopefully our shared planning. And so we really put ourselves again to say that we know that these partnerships are critical, and we know that they can help, but we need to make sure that we know where to start, and at times know how to start the conversation, especially when there are shifts, and making sure that we can always push ourselves to, in a safe way, assess this. So you'll see that this is kind of rubric based when you get into the tool. I'm going to ask you to complete it. So you're going to go ahead and hit pause again, and you're just going to go ahead and kind of read those, look at the characteristics. Some of them, again, we try to be exhaustive in the way that we know out of school time programs operate. But again, we're not saying that everything is there. You have the tool, so there's always an opportunity to add other characteristics and think through the same kind of rubric scoring of beginning, intermediate, and advanced, and kind of just see how thinking through the differences helps you and your team contextualize the work, and then in a way start charting next steps. So at this point, I'm going to ask you again to just go ahead and hit pause, pull out tool 50. You're going to look at those characteristics, take your time, again, just working through it. Again, if you're by any chance, if you're by yourself, this is the opportunity to work that out and maybe not only score, but make some notes to yourself about what you want to share with your team. If you're doing this in some type of collaborative way, then it always works to say, I'm going to do mine and you do yours, and then let's share what's going on and how I scored it, so that we can then again start conversations about those disagreements. And in this place, disagreements are good. We just want to create conversation starters here. So go ahead and hit pause. Go ahead and go through that assessment or that progression, that rubric. Take your time, and then when you're ready to re-engage, you go ahead and hit play, and I'll be right here. Okay, welcome back. So again, here you were working through the progression. Again, you were either by yourself making those big notes to share with your other teammates later. If you're doing this together, hopefully you had a great conversation. Here again, hope you're going to see that probably everyone thought there might have been different alignment, and that's okay. We had robust conversation because again, we're just pushing ourselves. Because again, if we know where we are, we can push ourselves to provide wider ranges of services, right? Um, if we know where we are and we know what we need to do, then we start looking for, again, this alternatives to ways that we can reinforce what's happening in school because we know we're pushing ourselves in some of these alignments to support our young people in bettering the academic outcomes. We also know that those type of outcomes don't just happen, and some of these things are really about consistency and supporting social emotional development so that we can look at the culture of and the different aspects that are supporting or not supporting the learning environment and how the program may be able to step in there and kind of provide resources. And then also we have an opportunity to leverage these partnerships to say, hey, we have some really great trained youth development, really great eager youth workers that can maybe mentor, structure these experiences in the school if we can leverage this understanding or these broader partnerships. So there's a lot of opportunity, but we need to know what we're trying to do, and this progression can maybe help, again, start the conversation and help start thinking and calibrating our aim. Now, let's talk about some benefits to this. Hopefully, you saw benefit in just that conversation. A lot of time, we're just trying to pull ourselves to collaborate a little bit more. Um, and always in this way, trying to even broaden or push ourselves to broaden the eyes on these type of tools to say, okay, I feel this way. What if I give it to somebody else and what do they think? And always try to fill in the gaps. But we know that there's benefits here and there's opportunities here to really push this alignment. So pushing alignment, we see that you can foster, again, better program supports and really crystallize a shared vision for learning, and pushing the fact that, again, we know more and more what, again, the science of learning and development looks like. A lot of that has always looked and still supports the youth development approach to engaging young people in this manner. Again, we want to push those positive experiences across ecologies. So the vision has to go not just in program, not just when they're with you, but it has to resonate into the school. And if you're providing program in school, then you need to shine bright there. If you are external, then you really are in a position of having to leverage those relationships to make sure that the supports that are being provided, in a way, the applied philosophy of youth development is happening, and people know that when you work with our young people, you're working with young people who are being empowered and being pushed to be, again, in a shared experience, and that might not work in a traditional school setting. But again, you never know until you have these conversations. You need to maximize these resources. The idea here of knowing what you want to do and if whether you're aligned or not aligned allows you to then say, okay, we need this. And that also puts us into a better level of partnership because we have to refine our why. At times we know we need a lot. But if we go through some of these strategies or use these tools and think through it properly, then we can start really focusing a little bit more about what we really kind of need to really pull critical levers to get things moving, even if it's not the only thing you need. But we need to kind of just push ourselves there. Again, it also helps with continuity. Again, the space of youth development or kind of just good learning theory lives obviously in educational psychology, and at the kind of the most critical aspect would always be consistency, continuity of both message, a style of learning, of how you engage, how you differentiate, the access to what you're giving them to really support their developmental needs, what are identifying what those needs are by hopefully sharing data across either with at the teacher level or at the school to program level, but really making sure that you can fill those understandings of what the young people need. So again, we could also help in the differentiation of the learning supports, and obviously try to get more and more to this level of individualized learning or support because we know some of our young people really need that, But more and more, we're just finding, and especially in this current shift, that everyone is going to need some type of individual support. And that's going to push us into a problem of human resource. We don't always have all those. Schools most definitely won't always have that, especially as they're focusing on academic content. This is an opportunity to leverage our relationships to say, this is what we can offer. And so tool 49, I'm just going to have you reference that. You have that as a tool because that's one that you really want to take some time to do. We'll pause here, but the idea here is really tool 49 puts you in a place of thinking through how you can align that work across subjects, really outlining the various skills that you think that you guys can contribute to through program or underpin, again, all these social emotional skill and competencies, any of these 21st century skills, or any of the broad skills that will support the learning that is going to happen here. And then the different priorities that they might have. Again, thinking through how, when you're gonna, if you're doing this internally as a team, to say, as soon as we can talk to those partners in the school day, we know that these are the top priorities because at least we've planned that out. We've at least put them into some type of priority that we can take to them. And we figure out how we hit the ground running every time when we get into these different topics that you're going to identify, because you're going to see that there's a lot of space there and there's going to be a lot of opportunity for alignment. So we're going to prioritizing so that you don't exhaust yourself or that you don't build yourself up to fail based off of what you're trying to script out. You'll see that it's always good to just be earnest and honest with yourself. And at times that's where working with a team is great, because I may think there's a clear alignment and think that it might be low priority. And then other teammates may, again, these conversations of disagreement will help us push along the continuous improvement cycle. So go ahead and reference that tool. We'll go ahead and pause here. You can either work through that whole tool. Again, you have the time, and you can work through that. You could also make notes to yourself about how you want to incorporate this, who you might involve in this type of planning. Again, either at the school level, if you already have those partners, or that person that you've always wanted to talk to, and this could be a relationship builder by thinking through something that is, again, that captures this type of information in a collective manner. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit pause. Take a look at that tool 49. You're gonna see, think about the subjects, the skills, the priorities, and go ahead and hit play when you are ready. Okay, thanks. Welcome back. Here we are, tool 49. Again, should have already framed this idea that there's a lot of opportunity. Now, whether or not it's going to happen overnight, that's the reality check. But it's better to have it mapped out for everyone, especially if you've done this collectively and had different eyes or different ideas or inputs into it, then really you have a good now landscape of what needs to be done, what could be done, especially when you start looking at those priorities, and that hopefully helped bubble some of them up so that then now maybe what is those initial action steps that can get some traction, because we know that we want to kind of, in a way like how we do with teaching, we want to teach for success. We want to catch some traction so that we don't always feel that we're planning and planning and planning and nothing's coming of it. So again, this is always something that you want to revisit, and hopefully that experience and just thinking through it, and maybe even thinking how you can bring it back to your team, is helpful. At this point, we're going to shift to the activity level, because again, there's always that pieces of those organizational pieces that this is pushing you to think, but you saw that there are elements of how we get it to the, let's say, point of service, and really working to integrate, again, this alignment at the level of supporting our young people. And that lives in a place of intentional activities, really pushing ourselves to think about the offerings, what we're engaging our young people in. And I know that everyone who might be you're watching this, you might be working with different age groups. That's okay. You might be working with various different age groups. That's the fun of after school and out of school time, right? The idea here is to really push ourselves to say, what are we doing? What are we doing with them at any of the age group? Again, we're already thinking through alignment. That pushes us to think about the different teachers or different grade levels or grade teams that we can try to align ourselves to, so we can get those data of what they're working on, so we can help support both the broader application of it or just the application of some of those concepts, but we need to know what those concepts are. So it pushes us to try to develop our intentional activities by, again, looking at the alignment, not mimicking what's happening in the school by any means per se. We want to still keep the out of school time flair. We still want to keep it good, but we know that we need to align ourselves to what good learning is. And so we need to push ourselves to think about being age and stage appropriate with our activities, just making sure we're responsive to where our young people are, right? To meet the young people where they are. Well, that lives in both their age. We can't make assumptions on their age. So it goes back to where do we get those data? How do we know that we're being age and stage appropriate? Some of that data might live in the school day through social workers, counselors. Some of that might live in us by just knowing them and being in those great developmental relationships with them. So again, there's an ebb and flow of this data. It just needs to inform what we're doing. We need to be clear, consistent, fair with the guidelines and expectations about what we're doing and how we're presenting it to our young people. Specifically, if we're trying to push out and engage them in social and emotional learning. We want to, that pushes us to make sure that we are so intentional that we have a good plan in place. Now, in this out of school time world, we always talk about that there are curricula in the world because of the ebb and flow of our young people, because of the different resources, curricula time, it's hard to walk that line. So we always say a good plan is better. And so we're going to push ourselves even to this academic enrichment plan at the end of this session. But for now, we're just going to talk about what are these activities and how can we know that we're being intentional. So you have tool 73. And then you are going to pull that one out and to get, kind of just look through again, this idea of what's the rationale? What's the why here? Why are we offering? Like, how does it connected? Where is it connected? I'm also going to say it doesn't always have to be connected to academics. It can, the social, psychosocial supports that we offer are critical to learning conditions, to making sure that our young people are ready to learn. So we also have to make sure that those rationales get in there, right? And then we're really also looking at like, what is this intentionality of our outcomes? Like, do we know? Because it pushes us to know that if to back map or work with the end in mind to say if we know that we report that our eighth graders are having issues with bullying, how do we support again positive relationship and maybe peace circles or talking, different strategies that we could do in program to support what we know is happening in the school day. Obviously tutoring and academics is always one, but again it could always be broader. So go ahead and hit pause, think through again activities that are available, the different rationales for them. Again, if you're thinking about this by yourself, it could always be who you want to ask these questions to, what other team members you may want to do this with, because you know that that will then be more fruitful. Take your time, but again, it is your time. Go ahead and hit pause, and when you are ready, go ahead and hit play, and we'll be back to kind of push this into a couple more tools that should help you push along the school day connections and really crystallize learning and share that with your school partners. Okay, go ahead and hit pause, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Hopefully that intentional activity tool pushed you to really think through your connections to learning. Now here, this idea here is really pushing ourselves and our different staff members who are designing these activities or who hopefully you're engaging in this type of professional development or pushing them to think through and be more intentional about their offerings so that we can really get to the learning that we want or the outcomes that we want. And those, again, those are positive, those are academic outcomes, those are social and emotional outcomes. The idea here is we're broadening that we know we want to just understand and support learning. So by the times we also want to just be very clear about what are these connections to learning from our offerings. And so this tool is great. That's why I'm putting reference there. You can go ahead and pull it out now, even while I'm talking to you. The idea here is there is you'll see that there's just kind of already clear ways to think about what we would say are run-of-the-mill out of school time offerings. Again, you have the tool in Word form. You're able to even add your own of what you actually do in program. And you see that then there are just a clear domains of other academic based offerings or kind of domain subject matters that you can see clearly there just how you could articulate those explicit connections to those subject matters. this already could just maybe even help you out. You're just like, oh, I never thought of that, or exactly. So I'm going to give you that opportunity. Go ahead and pause it and just kind of peruse that, see how we did when we made these connections to learning. Go ahead and circle even the ones that you might be doing and that you guys do in program. Again, you could already make notes to yourself about how you want to engage other team members to think through these connections across subject matters, depending on what you're doing in program, what you want to do in program. So again, go ahead and pause, take your time. Depending, again, this is a lot. This is already populated, but gives you an opportunity to just see some connections and maybe broaden or think through what you're already doing or what you want to do. I'll be back. Go ahead and hit pause. So hopefully there, you now have this, you have your connections, you're seeing that. And in this next shift, we're going to talk about how you engage staff in taking or really meeting the school where they need us to be. Talk about meeting the young people we are, but when we talk about partnerships, and I think some of those bullets earlier talked about how we really, it's a duality here. This isn't meant to say we're here and they're there. For some of you, again, might be implementing program in the school. If you're in an external program, then you're really trying to say, how do we create the continuity, or at times actually go to the school and make those connections. But we're looking at them as external partners. Again, this partnership is going to look different depending on what your context. But at the end of the day, we know that if we can show and support our partner in what are their goals and outcomes, which is all of us are there for our young people, their their outcomes on the academic and on the social emotional side are things that we have always said we can support you on that. But again, we want to be purposeful in that. We want to show them and show each other, especially the young people and their families and the broader community, that this just doesn't happen by happenstance. So again, these are the planning tools that can help us push through that. And thank you for looking at that. And hopefully it gave you some ideas about, again, amazing things you guys are already doing to push learning, or again, the next steps or different ways to think about it. Because what we're doing, again, is being intentional here. And one of the other next pieces that we push you to, and again, is for reference, because this is a bigger ask, is that as you think about all of those same activities, is that a lot of the work that we do already has been connected to learning and supporting learning or the application of learning. At times, what we really need to do is just map it out. And so again, different is the time to look at your resources in-house for those who may already like these type of activities. Because at the end of the day, looking at the standards of your state, standards have not changed very much. Even the shift to the Common Core took a little while. And the idea here is that there are various standards outside of just math and ELA across many states. But in your state, you want to go ahead and probably pull up the state standards. Think about even the tools across, I mean, the activities across the tool 73 or tool 74 as that you already listed, and really then think at some point, once you'll see the tool works you through connecting to the grade level standards, really kind of just mapping it out. I would suggest the digital aspect in this day and age is pretty good because you can just copy and paste them. You go to the social studies, fifth grade, working with fifth graders, art standards, and how that applies to some of the stuff you're already doing. Because at the end of the day, once that lives there, it's just really a great support to say, look, this is how we're supporting you. And it's crystal clear this way. And just having that kind of in your arsenal or in your toolbox already filled out um, can support potentially other funding, can support broader partnerships, can support just again more conversation starters at times. But again, you never know unless you do it. But again, it supports a lot of the great work and really pushes it. That again, it's not just our opinion that it supports learning. It's we're intentional. We're so intentional that we did our research and look at all the things that our young people read, not only anecdotally, but you'll see it right here. Now, we're going to push you here now to really take some of those activities that you saw. And maybe, again, if you're by yourself, we're going to shift to thinking about maybe picking one of those that you might want to really hone in on, or hone in on an activity that, you feel you guys do really well, or one that maybe in the prior to the shift, or again, even as you guys have been working through the summer, may have hit some roadblocks, even though you thought it was going to go really well. This tool is going to give you a really great opportunity to kind of really think through the ins and outs of a great quality academic enrichment activity. Let's talk really quickly about what academic enrichment is. Again, we want to push and take any activity, right, to both high quality. High quality means that we're checking ourselves on the approach and how we come to the activity as adults. So that's that youth development checklist that can support, again, kind of giving us a quick diagnostic of how we think about that. But at the end of the day, you'll see some of those things in that checklist live here too, because it's meant to kind of give us an operationalize that approach to youth development. So again, we want to have hands-on interactive activities. Again, we want to connect it to the learning in their lives, and obviously school is a big one. And again, and it's not always math. It's again always potentially always this potential of broadening it to how they cope with the rigor, the stress of school also, right? So again, it's the learning is it, hits different places in different young people's psychology. Again, we want to make sure that it's integrated with their content because this is just helping them. It's helping them. I always say that if in seventh grade someone related everything to soccer, which was what I was obsessed with, potentially I'd be better at math. The idea here is we just need to integrate it well, but we have to leverage, right, authentic decision making with our young people so that we can get them and leverage some of that information so you know what they like and what would be helpful to you to make connections to for better integration of what they're doing in school and helping them learn it better. Um, Again, more leadership because you really want to get them to fully engage and be part of their learning so that again it's what Dewey used to call like lifelong learners. You have to promote that just doesn't happen, and that half of that is overcoming those obstacles that we can help support, so that we can take the edge off of learning because learning is tough, and in this digital environment learning is even more impersonal, so we have to at times try to bring some of that back, by giving them leadership opportunities outside, like get them to investigate, get them to think about things in a more constructive way than just receiving content. Relationships, another great way of kind of really getting it out of just a more screen time. Again, talking to people, working through collaboration. What does that look like in a virtual space? What's it going to look like in program? How are you going to make sure that they work with different kids, not always just the same kids? We have to break up those cliques. And so again, that puts us in the activity design to be intentional about it. And you're going to see that this tool works any staff member, again, or a program director who may want to script out various activities for implementation to say, hey, this is going to make sure that if you work through this, you're checking all these boxes to make sure that the young people have the best experience possible. And obviously, always the last one, making sure that we're age ability appropriate to make sure that, again, we just don't always assume that everyone can participate in that and then react in the moment and potentially ostracize. Or, again, we need to be so forward thinking about our young people, the conditions, what we have to live in that intentional space. And this tool is going to push you to do that. Again, there's a lot of words here, so go ahead and take a second just to kind of read this. So this is just ways that you can use Tool 75. Tool 75 is, again, really great in a way that it puts you kind of through, let's call it the gauntlet of what do you do? Why are you doing it? Do these things exist already? And then what are you going to do about it? Because we know now more and more that, again, you cannot just expect learning to happen. You can't just expect these outcomes that you might be shooting to happen with your young people. This is where it lives. It lives in making sure that we have been so, like I said, thoughtful about all the aspects of programming, about the experience of all of the different young people, which I know pushes us because we don't have all the human resources too. But that's, again, the alignment. Who do we need? What other resources do we have? What do we have over there? And at times we need to know what we need so that we can go and ask it. So we have to refine our ask. And working through these things, both you can be practical in working through this tool. You can be visionary, you can push yourself to the ideal because maybe that's going to help you then asset map and push yourself to be broader in what you can be intentional about planning for, right? It's a cycle, it's development. You implement it, think about how it went. What else could you have done? And then you go right back, you start improvement. So again, this tool should hopefully help crystallize and inform some of the other things that we've been thinking about, what the tools have pushed you to think through. Go ahead and think through an activity, either from tool 73 or tool 74 that you saw there, or an activity that you're already doing in program that you just love. And like I said, or one that might have been floundering, just pick one. If you supervise staff, you could think about all the different activities that you know you would like staff members to fill this tool out for. Art-based activities, sports-based, recreation, tutoring, any activity scripted in this way will just help and push purposeful planning, push the quality of the offering, and like as I always say, will help with sustainability. Because if this is already sitting, even if it just filled out, people play, just do it, eventually hit autopilot and just go through it. When you lose or pretend somebody leaves your program, that really great activity facilitator, that thoughtful planning can help the next activity leader not start from scratch. But again, you never know. So go ahead and hit pause. This one could take you as much time as you need. Again, be thoughtful. If you go through various activities, just go ahead and hit pause. And when you're ready, just go ahead and hit play and we will finish up. Okay, welcome back. So tool 75, you should have now a pretty well scripted, again, depending on how long you took, rough draft of, or again, very well typed up academic enrichment plan. I think hopefully it pushed you to think about all the different domains and what it takes to really get this thing off and moving. You'll see that more and more in this place around school day connections, it really pushes our programs, again, to be intentional. You have to be intentional of our planning, of our plans, how we capture our great thinking and all of our innovation, especially tapping into the younger youth workers who have so many great ideas of how to connect with the young people, but just again, just scripting it out so that we're not always shooting from the hip. And again, always pushing ourselves to the understanding that it's still always continuous improvement. It's always doing better tomorrow, making better mistakes tomorrow, but pushing ourselves to hold ourselves accountable within our groups to, again, what we either write down on paper or what we do. And then you see that now you have some tools that could hopefully help you through that journey. This is how you get a hold of us. Any questions you might have as you've been working through that you might have put down for yourself, you could always go ahead and email that to us. We'll try to help. If not, if you need access to anything or just want to tap into some other resources that are broader than what we've been talking about today, this is how you can find us. Thank you so very much for your time and thanks for the work that you do.